Straight ahead is kind of just going from frame 1 to frame 2 to frame 3, and you're basically kind of feeling your way through your animation. You're basically making it feel right. It's kind of getting the best of both worlds. You're getting the advantage of pose to pose, which is very high clarity, really good silhouette, really good timing, but in the same sense, you're not sacrificing that kind of really nice organic feel you can get in animation.
So for things like tails, big floppy ears, cloth, hair, antennas, all this stuff I would animate, unless I'm using it for some kind of expression, I would animate that straight ahead after I had pretty much locked down the main body performance. So the cool thing about all these different blocking methods that we're talking about is that you can use them in conjunction together. So for instance, if I was going to be animating Taylor, which is the ball with the tail, if I'm going to be doing that animation, I use a couple of different techniques. First of all, I'd animate the ball bounce first using a layered technique. So I'd kind of like get the up and down working, and then I'd kind of like add in the arc, and I'd kind of adjust the tangents and really get the bouncing ball working first. And to me, that's using the layer method. So I'm kind of layering different controls on top of each other, maybe adding then, after I get that arc really nice, I can then add the squash and stretch and get that all in there. And once I get that defined, then I can use straight ahead method. So straight ahead is then I can turn the tail on, boonk, right? So I'm hiding the tail in the beginning, I'm just working on the ball. And then now I'm going to show the tail and use straight ahead, because what's going to happen is the primary force that generates the secondary action of the tail is the ball. So the ball moves, and everything that happens on that tail is subjected to what happens with the ball. So once I do that, I can literally go almost just step by step, and I see the ball moving upwards. I know when it moves upwards, the tail is going to drag down and come up as it starts to fall. And we'll be talking a lot about overlapping action. I just kind of wanted to introduce this idea to you guys that you can kind of combine different methods and really work out certain sections of your animation first, using layered or using pose to pose, maybe hiding arms when you get to characters that have arms, and then adding the arms later, so you can just really get that movement down really well, and then you can add the arms later. So it's like combining these different methods, pose to pose, layering, and straight ahead animation. Straight ahead animation isn't just good for things like tails and hair and ears and extremities. It's also, the power of that method lies in the spontaneity that it can give a performance. Once you have your main key poses down and you have those locked down as drawings, either on a drawing board or in the computer, your whole performance is pretty much there in a pose-to-pose method. And then you can sometimes, and I find this really powerful for straight-ahead animation, is to then literally just work through the performance, maybe little bit by little bit, and straight-ahead animate then from after you have a key pose and then maybe a breakdown and another key pose, that you just kind of literally move to those keys and start adding in the in-between motions straight ahead. And sometimes the power of that method can give such a nice live quality and spontaneity to the performance that I don't think could be done if you just animated it layered or just pose to pose. It's the combination sometimes of the methods that work best.
Like my form of working is I will block something in a pose-to-pose manner to get approvals, but a lot of times I like to leave it, even though I've blocked it in pose-to-pose, I go through it in a straight-ahead fashion, wiping through those poses. I might not use every one, or I might alter it significantly because of the straight-ahead thing. So I can never seem to do anything purely on straight-ahead or purely on pose-to-pose.
You get a natural flow in and out of the movement. To me, I find animation to be extremely spontaneous because when I work, I plan out my shots so I conceive the overall motion in broad strokes, the general basic storytelling drawings and breakdowns and extremes. But it's with the method of straight ahead animation that makes the animation feel spontaneous when I go to animate it and start refining the movement. And I start making decisions right there on the fly because I know the overall performance is there. But once I start going into it straight ahead, I'm like, oh, well, maybe the hand could drag a little bit more here, or maybe the ball could squash a little bit more on the ground. And those kinds of things really help me to make my performance seem spontaneous as opposed to labored. And it took a week. Although it might take a week to do, I'm trying to constantly make spontaneous decisions, and straight ahead animation helps keep that animation fresh and spontaneous looking. In CG, I don't think I would ever want to animate a scene completely 100% straight ahead, because I think it could get overwhelming and pretty out of control pretty quick. So before I start a shot, as part of my planning, I like to know which method or methods I'll be using when I'm animating a shot. And almost always it's a combination of the methods. Maybe it's a combination of all three or just a couple. But I like to know that before I start, because it'll help me to get my performance in there, hopefully a little clearer and a little quicker. So you really have to ask yourself, does this action feel like a posed-based action, or does this feel like a layered-based action? And sometimes it's a little bit of a combination of both. And through the years, I think that's what most of the animators that I know have found to work best for them, is really just finding a combination of the methods before they start, and then utilizing those different methods to get a better, clearer, and quicker performance. So in the end, it comes down to practice and just plain old trial and error. But in time, each one of you is going to find the method or methods that work best for you. So just get out there and start experimenting.
And I usually just space it out where like things will hold and then transition into another hold and then transition into another hold. And even if it can look like, in my mind, I've already kind of figured out, you know, what it's going to look like when it's done. Because that's like the biggest thing in CG for me, was learning like foresight. I was so frustrated at first, like I knew what I wanted it to look like, but there was always like with the holes and the in-betweens and not all the avars are in there at first. I was so frustrated, like, it doesn't look like what I want it to look like when, you know, I'm first doing blocking. But I've learned after doing so many shots that it does eventually just kind of like, you gain the ability to look at your blocking where it's like, you know, and know that, oh yeah, that's going to work. Because, you know, when you get like 2 days later, it'll be like.
Yeah, keep it simple, keep it clear. What does that mean exactly? Well, what that means is if your scene has too many poses, too many drawings, too much stuff going on, then it's not simple. And in the beginning, you want to put so much stuff into your animation that you forget this super important fundamental rule of keeping it simple. And there's an old saying, keep it simple, stupid, KISS. I still go back to this principle and I try my best to simplify my scenes. A lot of times still I get criticism that I'm trying to put too much stuff into my scenes. And it's important to get that feedback again from people and to make sure that it's reading clearly and communicating. If it's doing that, then your scene is good. And that's why it's important to trust what you're going to do in the end, because it's going to be up there for people to see, and it's got to represent something that you feel is what you want to communicate to the audience. All right, so you guys hung in there. You're here, you're all the way at the end of the class, and I just wanted to say there's so much information in this class, and I know a lot of it is going to like go over your heads, and a lot of it might stick. And this class should serve as a baseline for you as animators, because it's really the core of what animation is. Like the planning, the 7 planning methods, that's basically how you come up with the magic, right? How you come up with your ideas. And then the blocking methods are how you take those ideas and put them into the computer. So all that information, that's a lot of stuff to take in. So I really want you guys to make sure to take as many notes as you possibly can, and to also refer back to them, okay? Because there is so much. There's 7 planning methods. Are you going to use all 7 planning methods every single time you do a shot? Absolutely not. But you might use 2 or 3. That's very common. You might want to experiment with different ones depending on the shot and the complexity of it. So use these different techniques and see what works for you. No one way of working in animation works for everyone. It just doesn't work that way. And so kind of experiment with each shot, if you can, with some different techniques, especially when you go into the blocking stage, because then you can start experimenting with layering and pose to pose and straight ahead and seeing what works for you. There's so many different techniques, but this class really kind of just shows you all the available techniques that you can use in your animation. So we really hope this serves as a foundation for you guys and is something that you'll look back on as you try different shots and different techniques when you get into acting and all that, and really helps you guys push your work to the next level. And I wish you guys the best of luck in implementing these ideas into your work, and I'm super looking forward to seeing what you guys come up with in it. So I hope you enjoyed and have tons of fun. Adios.